I don't know. Okay. Uh, Hello, puppies and kittens. I'm trying to do something a little bit different today. I mean, every day I waste some amount of my time arguing with people on social media, and it's like all these people want to argue with me, but then when they get a chance to do so in real time, they bugger out. Every time they put me on the line, if people will say, "I would destroy you if we had it," but then it never happens. You can come on now. We can pick you out of the chat and bring you onto the show now if you'd like. But let's see if that happens. Now, one of the things that I have problems with is I make all these videos that explain phylogeny, which I think is the strongest evidence for evolution. It's the first evidence that there ever was for evolution. I mean, people knew from breeding horses and pigeons and stuff like that that you can derive characteristics that you're looking for. It is not limited to, you know, no, don't, and I'm not having dogs ruin the show. It is not down to, if you mix a black dog with a white dog, you get a gray dog. It's not like that. You can derive whole novel traits can come this way. So they had an idea that evolution worked. They just didn't know what it was. They knew that you could derive new breeds, but they didn't have a way of deriving new species. When something is so diverged from their other set that they don't interbreed anymore. So when Carolus Linnaeus, oh damn it, yeah, my wife chose this moment to go walk the other dog, which sets off all of these. So when Carolus Linnaeus devised his system of taxonomy in 1735, he realized that what he was showing was a pattern of, it was a family tree, ancestral groups branching into more and more daughter sets, and that was the only way to classify things was in this order. And he realized that these are not the separate boxes of created kinds that he was expecting. And so his dilemma then was in trying to understand how can there be a family tree lineage like this. That this would require the emergence of new species, which he thought at the time new species could only come as a special act of creation by God. And so he had this mystery that needed to be solved, and he died without a solution. And then comes Darwin a century later and then writes a book on the origin of species by means of natural selection, solving Linnaeus's dilemma. And so they realized that there were ways that if one diverging group can get to the point where they're so far apart, when they're constantly building up mutations, unique mutations in each group. If you isolate the groups, they will each build up their own mutations until they continue expanding apart. And if they're genetically isolated long enough, then there's less and less probability that they will be able to hybridize, that they would be able to produce fertile offspring until when they get to the point where they can't or won't interbreed anymore, then you have produced a new species. And once you've done that, then you have the parent gene pool is no longer restrictive as it once was in the original collective. So now we know that new species can evolve that. So everything within a species that was called microevolution, and then when you have the emergence of new species, that's macroevolution, and of course everything from speciation on up is macroevolution. So that's the large scale. And there's the dividing point, speciation. It's on the macro side, and creationists just fall over themselves over that because they want there to be they can't deny that new breeds of dogs can come about, and that different varieties of parakeets or whatever, that all of these things can diverge, but they want to impose some kind of limit that doesn't exist. So they wanted to use the micro and macro distinction to do that. And when they talk about and they can't, and it makes them mad because there's nowhere else to go. When you hit them with the phylogeny challenge, they've got nothing. They can't touch taxonomy at all because taxonomy just reeks of evolution. There's no way around it. And then we get into something like the evolution of whales, and then there's so much evolution in here that some creationists have complained that there's too much evolution for all that. It's just too much evolution for 50 million years. And where do they come up with their arbitrary numbers? by not understanding what they're talking about, and using the argument from improbability fallacy. Well, what is the probability? And because they also don't understand that these are not random dice things. It's not like, you throw the tea leaves and it constructs Eiffel Tower. No, that's not what's happening. There are processes, natural processes, that will derive this thing on their own, incidentally, over time. And we understand how these processes work, but they don't get that. They think if you don't have a person arbitrating, if you don't have a person saying that, telling the wind to blow, then the wind won't blow. They don't understand heat disparities and all like that causes the wind to blow. No, because that's mindless material. It has to have a will and a purpose, and such is their problem understanding emergence. And when things get to where increasing complexity is involved, then they're really confused and don't understand how this works. So I'm going to run through the chat, see if I see any comments here that somebody says they miss Hovind. Did he get put away? Was I missing the news? Okay, and I don't see anybody saying that they want to talk about this. If anybody has a comment, I'd be happy to see in the chat. I'd like to bring some people on. Somebody had mentioned last night that we should also talk about, like tectonic plate movement and everything, because that's really integral to whale evolution. Now, it doesn't always apply for the evolution of every lineage, but certainly does with this one. Has a significant impact on this one. And I don't see. I was really hoping that there would be somebody in here that would want to argue with me like they do all the time in text. But you put a microphone in front of them and suddenly, where'd all the bravado go? Yeah. I miss somebody says, Freddie Ray says, miss Arn's debates with that crazy. And I'm going to guess that that's another reference to Hovind. Yeah. All right. Well, until somebody asks to come on, I'm just going to have to sit here and monologue. There's a number of things that I want to go over, though. I mean, I've had to explain it in chat messages. Like, I argue with creationists every day, and I've been doing it for a quarter of a century. Every day for a quarter of a century. So it gets a little old when it's always the same argument. 10 minutes later, or 10 minutes ago, just before we started recording, somebody on Twitter said something about when evolutionists, first error, assume, second error, that their theories are facts. There's a third and fourth error. That's in one sentence. How many corrections does that take? And it's every day. And it's not like they learn. The same guy will say that same sentence next week. Doesn't matter that he now knows what a scientific theory is, and how it's not the same thing as a fact, and how we use facts to support theories, and everything is theory, like atomic theory. All science is in theory, and we don't prove a theory true. We can prove it false, or we can amend it to correct it. But that's it. You can't prove anything true. So there's a rule in science. You can't prove anything true. So atomic theory, well, you don't have to worry about nuclear radiation because that's just a theory. No, it doesn't work, right? But once the person understands what a theory is and what the application of assumptions means, because we're weighing two hypotheses at the same time. Well, if this is true, then we would expect this. But if we expect this, if we assume that this is true, then we should be testing for these other things. No, they don't understand that. They will just tell me that facts are opinion, and that their opinions are fact, and there's no kind of reasoning with them at all. And I'm offering a format. Come on and talk to me about this. I make these videos on phylogeny that express all the detail, all the evidence for evolution that I'm aware of. And I know that there's always stuff that I overlook, but I put out everything that I'm aware of for the evolution of this lineage. And then somebody will post something. I posted a 45-minute video, and 60 seconds after it goes up, somebody posts a comment, there's no evidence of evolution. Obviously didn't watch the 40-minute video, did you? And how can you just say that there's no, you didn't watch anything? You just, I don't get the mindset. Lying to yourself. At some point, they have to know, right? They have to know that they're not being honest. And why do they accuse everyone else of everything that they're doing? It's like these creationists will bend over backwards trying to pin a fallacy on me. I had one again this morning. He tells me that he has evidence that the Bible is correct. Okay, what is your evidence? He says, the Bible says so. Not in those words. He gave me 2 passages of scripture and his interpretation or rationalization of what he thinks those 2 passages mean, and then accused me of a genetic fallacy because I said if it comes from the Bible, it's automatically dismissed. Not what I said. And then I have to explain to him the complex question or question-begging fallacy that is ubiquitous throughout all religion. Every day I argue with these people and I have to explain what evolution is to the same people. There has to be a cycle. It has to be that this person has had this explained to them before. Why have they not corrected this? Kent Hovind has had evolution explained to him dozens of times by experts, and he has no fucking clue what it even is. One kind of thing change, an individual of one kind of thing changing into, in one lifetime, one individual, a fundamentally different kind of thing. And the examples he gives are an elephant giving birth to a pine tree or a cornstalk producing hamsters. So he wants something that is so fundamentally different that it's not even related to its parents. Because if we were to present that, that would disprove evolution, wouldn't it? There would be no way to confirm something like that. And so they have to know that they have rigged the system so that everything that they're talking about is a straw man. They're desperate to make believe something that at some point they gotta know this isn't fucking true. When they say, well, you can't prove that, they want one fact. Show me one fact that proves evolution. We don't prove things positively. And 2, it's not ever one fact, is it? It's an overwhelming preponderance of evidence beyond reasonable doubt. And then what we do is we weigh 2 hypotheses together, right? We're trying to explain something. Maybe we don't always have 2 hypotheses, but whenever we do, whenever we can think of something, like what if there's other thing? Maybe there's some other thing going on. Let's test for that. In this case, we have, where did whales come from? Evolution, creation. So let's make a chart. Let's draw a line down the middle. Evolution, creation at the top. The facts supporting evolution, because that's all science is arguing for. Is it supported? Yes or no? Here's the facts supporting evolution. There's like the video playlist that we're talking about today, the one that I just finished, the three videos for the evolution of whales. Is evolution supported? Here are the facts, right? Is creationism supported? What facts? So, facts, objectively verifiable data, not your opinion, not your conviction, not what your priest told you. What we can both verify is actually true, not something you read in Weekly World News in 1978 that you can't even find a copy of and maybe misremembering. What we can both show to be true. It then needs to be positively indicative of that conclusion. It can't be the same fact as true in both, because then it doesn't mean anything, is it? A fact doesn't become evidence until it implies one or eliminates the other. So, for example, the fact that humans are, as even Linnaeus noted in the 1700s, the fact that humans are indistinguishable, taxonomically indistinguishable from apes, that is a fact that is positively indicative of evolution and exclusively concordant with evolution. Creationism doesn't have an explanation for that except for their God is a liar. Their God not only gave nobody evidence of his existence, but created all of this evidence to mislead us, to send us the wrong way. That would be their argument. God put the fossils there to test our faith so that he could punish us for our innocence. That's what kind of God they worship. Peter, you're going to have to chime in on me if there's anybody that wants to be on the show. Okay,
you have a few questions, and we had one person ask for the link, and I asked them what they wanted to talk about, but they haven't replied yet. So I'm waiting for that.
Okay, well, if you can find a way to give that person a link, I'll let them explain it.
Yeah.
I'll read the questions that came up.
Yeah.
Dwemerologist. How does tectonic plate movement affect whale evolution? Well, as I explained in the video that we're supposed to be talking about now, around 34 million years ago, India, which is on a separate tectonic plate than Europe and Asia, India collided with Eurasia. And previously, India was way out in the open, or way out in the ocean by itself, moving northward. And during this whole time, the area between India and Eurasia was called the Tethys Sea. And at this point, the Tethys Sea was where the Atlantic and the Pacific could mix waters horizontally, because the Middle East was basically underwater. There was no Middle East. Israel and Jordan and all that, they were underwater. So the Mediterranean was a connection point between the Pacific and the Atlantic, and tropical waters could hold the planet in what was called a greenhouse state. But then when India crashed into Eurasia and crumpled up the Himalayan mountains, which is still rising, then that closed off that seaway and also raised other land around it. It raised Pakistan and some surrounding areas. So now that the Mediterranean is cut off from the Atlantic, and so the Tethys no longer exists. And simultaneously, or just prior to that, Antarctica had broken off from South America and Australia and occupied the South Pole area, which caused the Antarctic circumpolar current. And now, because the horizontal passageway has been blocked, all the ocean flow is going vertically instead of horizontally, and it's coming from the poles toward the equator. So it's bringing up cold water up the shelves. And so this had an effect of chilling the planet. So it brought us into what they call an icehouse condition, where we have poles that are frozen, both poles frozen throughout the year. That's considered an ice age. And then a lot of people confuse the ice age with glaciation periods, but that's something separate that came later. So there was two stages of that. So the planet cooled significantly and water levels rose. And then the planet cooled again. Wait, did I say rose? No, I'm sorry. The water levels dropped. And then the planet cooled again even more. And then water levels dropped to unprecedented levels. And so we have all this available land that cuts off different flows. And so whale evolution had to follow along with that. And what primarily it did was it separated the archaeocetes from the neocetes. The neocetes have blubber, and the archaeocetes evidently didn't. So they're gone. All of the proto whales, all of these couldn't survive in the new type of oceans. Plus, species generally only make it for like 5 million years anyway, before becoming a new derivative. All right, and the next question, Jack McKnight. I mean, I have a hypothetical question about whale evolution, but it's more of a thought experiment. Okay, I'd be happy to hear it. Was McKnight the one that wanted to come on? Peter?
No, that was someone else who wanted to lurk in the background. But so that's, first of all, we don't take people on to lurk in the background. Second, you wouldn't hear more or less than you do on the show. So that's
okay. And then Star Song says, how complete a line do we have on whales? Is it to the point where it's difficult to tell where one species ends and the next begins? We can still tell when one species ends and the next begins, but we can do that with very, very intermediate stages, with many intermediate stages. What we have as far as a complete sequence is where we start with a four-legged animal that is both whale and artiodactyl. It has the diagnostic characteristics of both groups. And then as time marches on, the fossils that we find for this lineage have more and more reduced hind legs, more and more robust tails, and the front legs shorten and are more inclined for swimming. There's other little modifications, but we have species after species after species after species, both linear and branching, because the way evolution works is not one thing. These are populations. So as these populations expand, there's different things going in different directions, but they're all following the same rule of having reduced hind legs, stronger tail. They're more inclined, they're more bent for swimming. So they're having all of these adaptations written in, and it's quite fluid actually now. It's surprisingly smooth. I mean, there's no There's no substantial gaps, really. If I was try to find one, I can't think of one up the top of my head. Between Cucucetus and Myocetus and Georgocetus, I think we kind of got it all. So there's a very fluid line. It's like Sirenians, manatees. We have the full sequence for that too, from the four-legged, land-loving original Sirenian all the way to fully marine, no back legs, only the front flippers. We got every lineage of there, which includes the bits where they have four legs, but not all four legs can walk anymore, or they don't have the ability to walk anymore. With whales, what we have is where they still have back legs, but the back legs are attached to a pelvis that is no longer attached to the spine. So while it has stronger up and down flux for the tail flukes, for stronger, more powerful swimming, it no longer has the ability to walk. So it would be as ungainly out of the water as a seal. The next question, Matt White says, Aaron, did you see any whales when you were on your cruise? No, I didn't. I was in a floating casino that is nothing but restaurants and bars, and there was unlimited drinks and unlimited food. And so it was all paid for. And so that's what I saw. When I looked out on the ocean, I saw no sea life. We did a tiny bit of snorkeling, but no whales. And then let's see, next one. McCrinnan says, are modern sperm whales descendants of Leviathan whales? They seem like the Neanderthal whales. Yes. I mean, Leviathan melvillei is a sperm whale in every respect, including they're the same size. The only difference is Leviathan had teeth on the top. And the teeth that sperm whales only have teeth on the bottom jaw. And the bottom jaw is very gracile. It's very thin and wispy, kind of. And because the reason for that is they eat squid, and so they're eating much softer food. Whereas Leviathan, the size of the teeth that it had in both the top and bottom jaw, and the size of the jaw itself, implied that it was macroraptorial, that it was hunting other whales. This was an animal that was capable of fighting megalodon. And some whales do actually eat sharks. They eat great white sharks. I mean, like killer whales, for example, will target and surgically remove the great white's liver. They know exactly where the liver is. That's the part they want. They leave the rest of the shark. I'm not really fond of killer whales. And then let's see. Ifrit says, what's the current front-running theory on how baleen developed? I've heard varying hypotheses on the timeline of when teeth were lost versus when baleen developed. Yeah, interesting thing there. There are competing hypotheses, and there's evidence to back up different ones. There's formations in the top jaw that imply that at some point, like in Eomystacete, that there may have been the forerunner of baleen developing alongside the existing teeth on the sides of the mouth, but that it still had, and that the teeth that were on the sides of the mouth were also used for sifting, so they're weirdly shaped and bladed in a strange way, but the teeth that they had at the front of the mouth were still conical. And then there's some dispute as to whether because the baleen itself doesn't fossilize, so all you have is indications that may not be very clear. They're hard to interpret, and we know that baleen didn't develop in its current state, or wouldn't likely have, So what were the developmental stages of baleen? And we don't have the developmental stage because it would take pristine fossils to show that. So that's one of the interesting things that we haven't discovered yet. We know that it happened. There's no argument, and we know roughly when it happened, but we don't have the evidence for the part that doesn't fossilize. And then, all right, let me look at that one. Thank you guys for tuning into this. I was really hoping that I would get some people that I'm arguing with all the time on this subject when they want to come on and tell me that I don't know what a theory is, or we don't have any evidence, or You're just assuming things. No, I want to talk real time, but no. Matt White says, Aaron, did you see the recent news that blue whales and right whales had produced hybrids, rue whales, recently covered by AIG News? Commented on Pelosia. No, I haven't heard. And I would be extremely distrustful of anything that was reported by Answers in Genesis. Go find another source that tells that story, and they'll probably have very different details. And then, but I mean, it's not impossible for mystocetes to hybridize. Let's see. And then Jack McKnight says cetaceans have to go through a transition from sea to land again to develop anything like hands to enable them to utilize their brains to a higher degree. Well, there would have to be some interesting things. They still have hands. They're just encased in permanent mittens. And so if the whale had to have some means of dexterity, you're right, they would have to come back on land again to basically to free those fingers. And that's one of the questions about evolution when they say, well, God created everything, and the excuse that they use that the reason that some things look similar, like the reason that mammals look similar is because they all have the same creator. Yeah, but shrimp have the same creator, don't they? So why don't shrimp look like mammals? There's lineages. See, a creator can decide that they want to put a Volkswagen Beetle that's got a little air-cooled aluminum engine in the back. Well, we can decide to make a different alloy and put it in the front and make it water-cooled. That's the way creators work. And we can still call it a Volkswagen. We can put the headlights anywhere we want, we can change to fuel type. We can make an EV. Doesn't matter. We can make it the exact same thing on the outside and change all the innards. But evolution doesn't work that way. Evolution kind of works from the outside in. In most cases, there's very few times that you have something that's fundamental that changes. So evolution has a bunch of rules that it has to adhere to that a magical creator doesn't. A creator can do whatever the fuck he wants. A creator can have horses with wings. A creator can have any number of mammals with feathers. You can have six-legged things. Why not change parts? Why not put something completely unique in one animal that the others in its associated group don't have? And that things that evolution couldn't account for. When people say, well, you can't falsify evolution. Well, the flying monkeys from the Wizard of Oz would absolutely do that, as would Pegasus, as would practically every other mythical animal we've ever come up with. The strange thing is every created thing, every movie monster, every alien, they're all based on something that's alive on Earth, but with different parts of different things mixed together in a way that violates taxonomy. So evolution could not produce that. Godzilla is one of my favorite examples, because if you go back and look at the original Toho Godzilla, whether you start as a lizard or you start as a dinosaur, either way, everything's wrong. And it comes out that Godzilla has fangs. He has a proboscis and tiny little external ears, because what they did when they created Godzilla was they made a cat face and put it on a sea monster. And they didn't know the difference between a dinosaur and a lizard. So they called it a dinosaur, even though it looks like a lizard. And then when TriStar made theirs and turned it into, they called it a lizard, they made it into a dinosaur. They gave it the legs of a dinosaur because nobody knows what the fuck taxonomy is. If people did, evolution is the only possible conclusion. There isn't an alternative. All right. So did I read that? Did I answer that? I don't know. Yeah, I answered that one. So Jack McKnight says basically
there was a follow-up from Jack McKnight. That's where you
basically asking what potential selection pressures would push them in that direction without having to at least partially come back on the land. I can't see another way. To get their hands back, they'd have to go back on land. And then farting duck, which I guess makes the same exact noise either way, says many contradictions in holy books work exactly like the hypnotist that says you're getting sleepy, but to stay alert. If you are religious, you've been hypnotized. Have an opinion? Yeah, I agree. The way that hypnosis really doesn't work, but the way that people perceive that hypnosis works is you just play along. It's a fake it till you make it thing. Professional hypnotists going through the circuit just says, play along with it, and then it'll take effect. If you don't feel it under your, just move along, and then you'll feel it. That's what religion is. It's all make believe. You're just playing along. Fake it till you make it. And if you keep talking to yourself as if someone else is listening, you're eventually going to hear those voices talking back to you. And it doesn't matter whether it's a god or a volleyball. Yeah. Anyway, next question is from Jadila Zakai. The name is mixed in with the first word of the sentence. So
Jadil Zoka.
Jadil Zoka. Okay. One thing I always wondered is when whales made the transition to living in water and occupied niches similar to crocodiles, wouldn't they compete with crocodilians that already occupied those? Yeah, but then that's been going on for a long time too. Because if you go back into the Permian, you had the predecessors for crocodiliforms. So there were things like crocodiles that weren't quite yet crocodiliforms, or crocodilians. They weren't quite crocodilians, but then you also had phytosaurs at the same time. And so, they're competing for the same space, doing the same kind of thing. And they even look very similar because they're closely related. But that kind of thing has been going on for a long time. And then, that was the last of the questions on there. All right, Peter, did you get somebody that wanted to come on?
Sadly, not yet. I mean, even the guy who asked the question said he wanted to do it just in writing. That was Jack McKnight. So,
okay. Well, I have a number of questions that I would love to ask to believers who want to say that that it's all a matter of interpretation or what have you. Like, for example, and one of the first things we have to do is understand what evolution is: descent with inherent modification, changing allele frequencies in reproductive populations over many generations. So it's not one thing that decides to grow feet or whatever in one lifetime, and then everything evolves from that. Creationists habitually take it out of the population level and put it on the individual, and then they shrink it down again and put it into the single lifespan, so that all the change has to happen in that one thing. And then they expect us to find that one thing that fundamentally changed completely from a plant to an animal or whatever. They're terrified of reality. I think that's what it is. Kent Hovind said, and I think this divulged quite a lot about his philosophy, when he said that he had heard somebody say that there either is a God or there isn't, and either idea is terrifying. I can understand being terrified of the idea of there being a irrational, judgmental, unrighteous despot who punishes not for good or evil, but who punishes eternally over the board, even innocent people, based on what or whether they believe or whether they bought into the bullshit that the clergy was selling them. Or did they listen to the lies of the right set of clerics? And that's what determines your damnation. I can see being afraid of that, but I couldn't understand being afraid of there not being a God. And the psychological difference between believers and unbelievers seems to be that. I mean, they have this fixation that they want there to be a purpose, that there has to be a reason that we're here. And I guess I'll accept any reason that the reason they are here is that their purpose in life is to die and then spend eternity kissing the ass of an indomitable despot who is, for some reason, inexplicably insecure. And so our purpose in life is to tell somebody who owns and controls everything, the uber galactic overlord of everything, to tell him how great he is, as if we would give a fuck whether the ants in our ant farm believe in us, much less worship us, right? I mean, why would a compliment from a peon even matter to you? Why would God care? Why would God need us to praise him? No, this is something that people need. Not all of us, certainly not me. It's just some people believe in authority and don't understand rationality. People will assume authorities, and they'll assume that if this guy says it, then it's true, even when we prove it false. Whereas the facts, I don't care what the guy says. If he says, "Oh no, I didn't," I did not have sexual relations with that woman, and then we find the dress with the stain and do the genetic test, you know what? I think he's lying. People who believe in authority would believe whatever he said, regardless. It's insane to me to want to be completely convinced of something that might not be true. It might not be entirely true. Why would I want to be completely convinced of something that might not be entirely true? I think everything should be taken tentatively. Truth matters to me. And that's the big thing. Truth matters to me. So I want my information to be accurate. I don't want to be fooled into believing anything that isn't true. If I find out that I've said something that isn't true, I want to correct it. I will certainly accept correction, because I have no point in believing a lie. The faithful do. Everything they believe is a lie, and they have to lie in defense of the faith. So yeah, they don't care what the truth is. They want to make believe something else. And I don't understand that. I can't fathom that. Do we have any other questions before I move on to this other thing? Okay,
Yeah.
two more.
Two more.
Omnipresent One says, do you know any examples of a comparatively smaller in size species going extinct as opposed to a larger one, like Basilosaurus, for example? Thank you. Love your channel. I mean, there are. I mean, we have a number of things that will dwindle down to like the last survivor, like Solenodon or Tuatara, for example. I mean, we've got like 2 species in one genus of Tuatara, and that's all that's left. And the fossil record used to have 50 of them, and they were all bigger than what we have now. Well, they weren't all bigger, but some of them were much bigger than what we have now. So yeah, that happens. It doesn't have to be the biggest thing. It's just the biggest thing tends to appeal to people more often. I'm surprised at the wealth of things that are found. Whenever I go, I'm lucky enough to go on a paleontological expedition, which I would love to do again. Most of the things that we find are relatively small. There was on the one in South Africa. I remember somebody found a salamander that was 5 feet long. And while we would say that a 5 feet long salamander is like really impressive, or 5 or 6 feet, and while it's bigger than any salamander we have today, it's still small by the standards of other things that we're comparing it to. And certainly the smaller animals don't often make the news. There have to be something very special about them to do that. One of the small animals that did make the news from the very team that I was with was that they found a Eunotosaurus, which was the type of transitional species they were looking for to confirm, to end a mystery on whether turtles were related to, whether they were descended from anapsids or whether turtles are from Crocodilomorpha. And now we've got Eunotosaurus showing that the link is from turtles to, it's a transitional species where it's a shellless turtle. It's got one of the indicators being these super large ribs, but the ribs haven't like exploded outside of the body yet. There's a number of stages for the development of the carapace and the plastron and all like that, and it just has the beginning stages of that. But it also shows it's not an anapsid, that the temporal fenestra have secondarily closed in this lineage, and that's what made it look like it was an anapsid. So that was neat. And I just realized probably nobody even understands what anything I just said for the last 5 minutes. Okay, so the next one, Rohan Clear says, what is the stupidest creationist argument you've ever heard? Sorry if it's an unrelated question, but it's all I've got right now. The stupidest creationist argument is the one I brought up a moment ago. It's dogs produce dogs. I think that's the stupidest one, honestly. And it comes from the stupidest creationist, I think. Because it is a parody of what evolution is. That the corn stalks producing hamsters, where the idea of one thing turning into another fundamentally different thing. That's the stupidest argument, because evolution doesn't even allow that. That would violate two of the natural laws of evolution. And trying to get a creationist to understand that, I don't know. It's like teaching a dog to drive. Okay, so by the way, they have taught dogs to drive. There's 2 dogs that can now drive specially modified cars. And I don't know why they did it. They said they were going to use these dogs for emergency situations. Yeah. But it's adorable to watch the dogs drive the cars. It's really fun. Okay, so then the Kagi says, Aron Ra, which religion do you think is the closest to how science have explained evolution? And no, you can't say none of them. Well, there are 2 that each one got something right. Hinduism said that a day of Brahma is 3 billion 320 million years is a day of Brahma. And that is surprisingly close to the age of the Earth. Totally coincidental, and it's not even completely accurate, but that's pretty good guess if you just wanted to make a guess, and we can associate it to something real, just arbitrarily, admittedly. And then Siddhartha Gautama, I think this is ironic because he was the first Buddha, and he said that whether gods exist or not is irrelevant. Beautiful. So yeah, he's right. And the shitty thing about that is that Siddhartha Gautama was later worshipped as a god. I've met Buddhists who say they pray to Buddha and that he answers their prayers with miracles. But the same guy would also tell me that they don't believe in a god. But they believe it to a magical anthropomorphic immortal who answers prayers with miracles. How is that not a god? That's everything a god is. That's a specific subset of gods, in fact. Anyway, Old Poi says, Aron, if you had to choose between Kent and a banana and Banana Man, and the outcome is one of them never existed, what one would you choose? I don't like that question because we learn from mistakes. My life included a series of regrettable mistakes, but I learned from them and they made me who I am. If I had a chance to go back and do my life over again, I wouldn't have made those mistakes, but I wouldn't be me either. And that's important. So I don't want to get rid of it. Have either one of them have never existed. I would say that Kent is more significant than Banana Man. Banana Man is just a grifter. Yeah, he's more successful than Kent Hovind is. He didn't go to prison and he didn't, get convicted of spousal abuse and all that crap. But Kent is a more overt depiction of what not to do. He's I much prefer him as an advertisement for what a creationist is. Ray Comfort is no doubt he's fantastically stupid, and he's a liar, and he knows it, but he's not as bad as Kent, because Kent is also a malignant narcissist, which just makes him intolerable.
You missed
Jack
two.
Schwartz.
No, you missed 2 above the one you just read. Misha Korshkov and Night of the Shape.
Misha Korshkov. What's your favorite cetacean? My favorite cetacean was, as a child, it was always the sperm whale. I liked monsters. When I was a little kid, I saw Pinocchio. I saw Monstro, the villain in Pinocchio, the great whale with the teeth in the top of his. And so I quite liked that. So sperm whales were my favorite as a child. Now I don't know. It was killer whales when I was a little older, and I went to SeaWorld and all of that. And I still kind of like killer whales for one respect, but I think I lean toward some other dolphins now. And I still respect killer whales. It's just I see them as not so intelligent as I think they're more like us. They're prone to potential acts of horror. Okay, so Night of the Shape offers $4.99 and asks, favorite beer? Well, I like stouts, particularly. There's two that I think. Well, there's one special. Dogfish Head End of the World Wide Stout is one of them. If you can find one of those, because they're hard to get, they're a collector item. And the other one that is should be readily available most of the time is Goosehead Island, Bourbon County, which is an imperial stout, and they're thick and black, and I really should make waffles one day and see what these stouts are like on it, because it really is like drinking alcoholic pancake syrup with a double-digit ABV. Yeah, and this one is from a local brewery. This one is Full Grown Nick. You can see this is the Christmas one. We just got the last 4-pack of that. This top. Hold on. Hello. All right. I apologize. My mother has been in intensive care for the last few days, and that was the hospital. They're saying that she is going to be released from the hospital. When the hospital calls you and your mother's in intensive care after all the shit that she went through, I'm taking that call. Sorry. Turns out everything's fine. All right. So, Tupps Brewery does a full grown series. A full grown man is what they originally called it, but then they do the monthly ones where it's full grown Nick, full grown Jack, which is a pumpkin stout, full grown Scallywag, full grown Ombre, all of that. And Full Grown Beast is my favorite, 15% ABV, and they've just got all kinds of weird stuff in it. Satan616 says, as a software developer, I hate when creationists say DNA is like a computer code. It isn't. What's your take on that stupid argument? Yours. My take is yours. I'm not a software developer, but I know several of them. A bunch of my friends are, and that's their opinion too. So thank you for that. And then the next one, Old Poi, says, Aaron, if you had to choose between, I've read that one. And then Jack Schwartz says $10 and says, thank you for the work you do. Also, thank you for helping inspire me to take on reptile projects with my 9-year-old daughter. You, Matt, and Arden should start a snake reptile show. Doesn't sound like a bad idea. I think maybe we'd just alternate and be on somebody else's show. Yeah, because that would still be fun. Pavelas Lazovskis says, any plans on making a series on bacterial evolution? It might hit closer to home for some people than millions of years of animal evolution we see antibiotic resistance developing in. I find that, again, the fundamental ignorance of taxonomy is a real pain. I had a friend who was giving a testimony to some panel in Louisiana. There was senators on the panel, and they're trying to give an explanation for why evolution is real and should be taught as fact. And when they said that they had observed evolution in the lab in bacterial cultures, one of the senators said, this bacteria, did it turn into a human? It's that level of stupidity, creationist stupidity and dishonesty, that makes me weep for my country. Okay, and then I think it was Jack Knight says, my question from earlier was more about any adaptation that would increase the likelihood of future cetaceans being able to further utilize their large brains. Yeah, isn't that a waste? Look at everything that is nearly as smart as we are. We had this magnificent encephalization over the other apes, so we're kind of separate from them. But there are others that are they're parrots and ravens, octopods, and whales that have stunning intelligence. And did I mention elephants? Definitely on that list. But everybody that has nearly the capacity that let's say they all have the same capacity. Their brains in a different body would have the same capacity as ours do. But they're all in a situation where, like, birds, the ravens, and the parrots, they have to stand on one foot to hold anything. How are you going to manipulate anything? How are you going to perform experiments? How are you going to make things? How are you going to build stuff? Just elephants. Again, you got one trunk. That's all you can work with. That's the only thing you've got to manipulate your surroundings at all. Whales, the smartest things out there, no hands, and they live in an environment where art and construction and chemical experimentation are all impossible. If raccoons were to experience some kind of mutations for massive encephalization, what would that be like? Well, we already know, because we've seen the Avengers movies. Here's a body that is capable. They have the wrists that can still do this with their hands. That's important. They still have hands. They can walk around on bipedally, not very well, but they can walk around bipedally and hold things. They can manipulate stuff with their hands. Yeah, if they had the brains that we do, they have the body that would also take it to the next level. But these are just arguments against intelligent design. An intelligent designer would not put this massive brain in a body that can't use it. All right, so the Reaver of Darkness says, Aaron, have you heard that apparently there are a lot of people who don't believe that narwhals are real animals? I told my brother, and he said, well, they aren't. I mean, documentary videos, what do you think? That he thinks they're all faked? The bones that they have, they all, of course they do. There's people running around saying birds don't exist, and that reality isn't real, and the earth is flat. People just want to flat out deny reality because they think that makes them special. Then Ali the One says, Aaron, could you clarify speciation? E.g., if Homo sapiens underwent allopatric speciation, one population on Earth, another on Mars, would they both still be Homo sapiens or two new species? Well, we'd both still be Homo. That never changes. But what you can do is one of two options. You can go with a trinomial name, like, say, when they changed the Canis familiaris was the old name for dogs. And when they realized that dogs were actually a subset of wolves, then it became Canis lupus familiaris, where there's a trinomial name. And it can go further. You can go Canis lupus familiaris dachshund, if you like. So there's that angle. We can be subsets of humans. We can keep the name and just add more names to it ever after. Or they just, to be convenient, they take the second name and just change it to a different one. We're still subsets, but now it's different. So Canis lupus becomes Canis familiaris. And it didn't change much. We don't regularly interbreed outside of captivity, or prefer not to outside of captivity. If both populations are stable, wolves and dogs prefer not to. And then it's just a matter of time before they physically can't. Okay, and so that took care of the questions. Peter, did we still have no guests, huh?
No.
Peter?
All
right. None of the people who wanted to argue with me all damn day, who want to waste all my fucking time, none of those people would come on and have me explain anything in real time so that we can get their reactions. I think that's important. I don't want to see their real reactions.
As we discussed before the show, the people who argue with you for hours and hours on end, week after week, don't have time to come on. That's it.
Yeah. Go figure. Excuse. All right. So I would ask a handful of questions to the mythical creationist, the empty chair in the room. First, I would explain a vestigial feature. A vestigial feature is one that is reduced in size and function from its original function, but it's not necessarily that it is absolutely useless, though it can be. The function can be reduced to zero, but a vestigial trait does not mean necessarily always zero. It can have some diminished capacity, like our fangs, for example, are vestigial. They certainly don't have the capacity to be used as fangs. They can just be used as regular teeth, and that's it. Our fingernails don't have the capacity to be claws. A dog's dew claw doesn't have the thumb ability that arboreal procyonids did have. So these are all vestigial features. We've got those on whales too, a few of them. A whale's leg bone is a vestige of what was once a hind flipper. The hind flipper is itself a vestige of what was once a walking leg. Yeah, so there's a vestige of a vestige. And sometimes there's different ways of interpreting it so that what we have in the whales now is a vestige of a vestige of a vestige, because we don't even have it as a flipper anymore. It's not even outside the body anymore, but it's still there. So we can see this progression illustrated in a radiometric sequence where you have, starting from 49 million years to 36 million years, somewhere thereabouts ago. We have this progression where all the whale species, and all the whale species that exist in this time versus this time versus this time, they have more and more reduced hind legs, stronger and stronger tails. The front limbs are more and more flippers. Eventually, they still have elbows for a while, and then they don't have any elbows anymore. They're just regular flippers now. And we see all of these progressions. Can creationism account for that? Or, being unable to and unwilling to admit when they're wrong, do they instead just deny all the fossils and their date and every other inconvenient truth? Well, that's the answer. They just ignore everything that contradicts them. Did we have a question on here? I think we do.
Yes. We had one super chat, and there's a question coming.
Ifrit, thank you. Ifrit offers $10 and said, "Loved having a casual chat with you, though. This was really fun." Thank you very much for that. Did you say there was another one coming, Peter?
Yes. It is. Yeah, there is it. It is.
There is? Okay.
Just
all right. Whatever, buddy. Serious question. Okay. Says, whatever, buddy. Serious question. How long does the human race have left at the rate we are messing up? Yeah. It's questions like that make me want to move on to harder stuff. Yeah. This is not the way I predicted things would be when I was a child, when I thought things are getting better and better and we're getting smarter and smarter. And then we didn't. Round about Nixon and Reagan, I started realizing that people are getting dumber now. And then I cannot say that. Enla Costa is Cuerda something. I apologize, I couldn't say it. I was wondering if anyone has looked up embryo development to study the origin of baleen in whales. That is a good question. But so far as I've tried looking up for the last, when I was doing research for my video, I wanted to see what news, and it's a good thing that I do the research because I do keep finding new things. And I wish I had done, because I made the mistake of saying Carcharodon megalodon, which when I was a young man, it was Carcharodon, but now they've decided that it's otodont. It's an otodont instead of Carcharodon. So 15 people correct me on that. So that was embarrassing. But so far, I think if there was any new studies showing the embryological development of baleen, I might have happened to cross it. I was certainly looking for something like that. But it's a good thing to look at if they haven't tried to look at that. And then Little Red Pony says, "What is your opinion of using gene manipulation to guide evolution?" Well, kind of all for it, at least in the capacity for human development. There's a concept that, and I don't like to use the label because everybody has their own idea about what it means. But originally, the concept of transhumanism was that we take over our evolution. We don't leave it to natural selection. And if you allow a buildup of detrimental mutations, then everybody gets to live. Well, then that creates this thing where we have debilitating genetics, and so that's bad. And then if you tried to allow natural selection on that, that's equally bad. So the only moral thing to do would be, when we try to make accommodations for whatever disabilities people have, and then we can also make genetic changes in the embryo and say, hey, this person has this trait. They're gonna suffer this trait, or they have the increased potential for this. But if we just alter this gene this one way, they won't have that problem. Or if we change this, if we give them if we give them a PAX9 mutation, then they won't have impacted wisdom teeth. They won't develop the third molar at all. The PAX9 mutation is one of those that was suggested that we should be able to do that in embryo. And there was a movie called Gattaca where they make these kinds of changes, and they explain it. These are your children. You would have to have 10,000 children to have one that comes out this perfect. So yeah, that seems like a good idea to me. I would love to have a certain LRP5 function and myostatin mutations combined with a handful of other mutations that I know of that would turn us into basically Avengers characters. Yeah, pretty amazing that we can do it. And then let's see. Yes, Kappa 1611 says, I have a question for Aaron. You mentioned once that you like Noam Chomsky's politics. Well, he and I are. I've yet to disagree with anything I've heard him say, and I know that he and I are put in the. When you take the various tests that tell you where you are on the political compass, he and I are in the exact same spot. The question was, I was wondering if you read his book on human evolution called Why Only Us. I didn't know about it until right now, to be honest. I haven't followed everything that just when he shows up in the news and he says something, like I have so far I've agreed with it, but I haven't sought him out. And then Kevin Murphy says, "Hey Aaron, would you consider doing doing evolution of pufferfish? They are my favorite, including the spotted pufferfish." I hadn't done, but one of the interesting things about that is no junk DNA. I think puffers are the only species that have been identified that have no junk DNA at all. Everything is coding or functional or regulatory, all of it. And then happy face, or smiling laugh. I don't know how to read that. It says, weren't you going to write a book on Islam? I remember you saying it. Yes, I was going to compile all my blog posts into an edited version that I was going to publish as An Infidel Reads the Quran. But my publisher said that the problem is that this was based on Abdel Halim's book. And so because of the publishing date on his book, I can't do it. They said they can't publish it. If I'd written my book based on something that had been published prior, an English translation based on prior to 1927, then we could do it. So I'm still going to compile all those and make them available somewhere. It's just not going to be going through a publisher. I'll self-publish and make it available for free, perhaps, because I don't see how I'm going to make any money on it unless I rewrite the whole damn thing. And then Colorado Biker says, Aaron, wouldn't transhumanism be equivalent to eugenics, by which I guess you meant eugenics? No, because eugenics is a differential breeding program. We're not doing that. We are taking children that are being born and fixing whatever's wrong before they come out the oven. It's a very different concept. All right, so I'm done with those. And before we close up here, because I don't want to be doing this too long, I did have some questions. If there were any creationists, and I was worried that there wouldn't be anybody showing up to argue with, it would be so much fun to have one of these people in real time have these conversations. But I mean, a handful of questions that I like to ask these guys. I like the one I just asked. Explain why whales are completely mammalian, with double-rooted teeth and milk and pelvic bones and hand bones in their flippers, with lungs and no gills. God doesn't have to follow the rules that evolution does. If he wants something to live in the water, why would he give it lungs? Why not also give it gills? Right? But because the creator can do anything. He can make it any way he wants to. And then explain why fossil masticids dating between 25 million and 33 million years old still have teeth. Well, they'll say, well, radiometric dating is uncertain. No, you're uncertain about it, but it's not uncertain because they keep trying it everywhere in the world, all around the world, year after year, and it keeps producing consistent results. That's not uncertain. That's quite certain at that point. Explain why every whale fossil dating between 49 million and 35 million years old has hind legs, and the more recent they are, the more reduced those hind legs are. As I said, where there's a point where they're not even attached to the pelvis anymore, where they've shrunken down to the point that even if they are attached to the pelvis, the thing still couldn't walk very, very well. They might be able to walk from one pond to another and then get back in the water because they can't run or do anything useful with those legs. They can swim with them, but that's it. So why would God create this sequence of things? Why would God create the radioactive half-lives in all of these samples, all of them, everywhere, all over? For the last century that we've been doing this, once we started figuring out how the radiometric dating works, which took until like 1950 to figure out a reliable way to do that. Now that we know the reliable way to do that, it works everywhere around the world. Look up geologic maps of anywhere. Look up geologic maps of where you live. Talk to the geologists to put these together and say, how did they figure these? They're all over the world. It's consistent, overlapping, concordant, everything confirming everything else. There's a tight network here where everything fits. The only thing that doesn't, creationism and the flood don't fit, and they don't work. Okay, so explain why there's a 50 million year old Pakicetus that has both the diagnostic traits of a whale and those of artiodactyls. And the principal thing with that explanation is the fact that the realization was later confirmed in genomic comparisons. So when they do the genome on whales, lo and behold, what the fucking surprise, whales are rooted within Artiodactyla, right at the base of it, deep in it, but they are in Artiodactyla. That's every genome, not just from one whale. It's every whale genome. They all match. They all say the same thing. And then to get worse, why is it that every genome ever retrieved always reinforces evolutionary phylogeny? Not just with whales, but everything. You compare the genomes of any 2 or 10 animals, and they're all going to show that the same kind of tree that Carolus Linnaeus figured out in 1735 using morphology. Why do the genetics match the morphology? And then explain why comparing every genome ever retrieved not only confirms an evolutionary phylogeny, but also matches radiometric dates in paleontology when evaluated against the molecular clock of average mutation rates. All of them, consistently, all the time. How can that be? You might have 1 or 2 errors where somebody fucked something up, because that happened, and creationists proved that when they deliberately fudged one of their own samples to show how you can fuck something up. But scientists have control measures so that they don't do that, so that they avoid those kinds of errors, and they understand the difference for different kinds of attributions, and how impurities can affect the samples, and how they can be very careful about these sorts of things that creationists are not careful about, because they're trying to draw a completely different conclusion. They don't want the reality to show, because they know what the reality will be if they were to do this properly, carefully, eliminating for all of the errors. They know. I'm convinced that if I appeared in front of Kent Hovind or Ken Ham or Ray Comfort, if a TARDIS appeared in front of them and I step out and say, hey, let's go back and see what the world looked like 10 million years ago or 100 million years ago, and they just saw me appear out of nowhere, so they know the fucking thing works, right? They wouldn't get in, because they already know that what they believe is not real. Nietzsche said that faith is not wanting to know what's true. And Mark Twain, in one of his characters, said that faith is believing what you know ain't so. And I like to post those two together, making those statements, because I think they both got it right. Actually, I got another question here. A few of them, it looks like. Where did I leave off, Peter?
Dale B1 is next.
Peter, you there?
Yes, Dale B1. $10 super chat.
Seem to have lost Peter. Colorado biker. Okay, now I read that one. Dale B1 offers €10 and says, I still find it incredibly sad that people can think of non-human animals as being thoughtless, dumb animals when we've seen dolphins literally getting high on pufferfish toxin. I just shared a video of dogs, hugging and loving on their owners and everything, and trying to protect, their owners. And it's just a reel of little short clips like that. One of them that was a German Shepherd lying on their owner's grave, and the German Shepherd was visibly sobbing. And it was so obvious, that heart-wrenching. But there are people in my family that have told me it's just a dumb animal. It don't feel nothing. People in my family believe that animals were automated machines programmed to act as if they feel pain and terror, but that they don't really feel those things. Yet, they would somehow also try to intimidate their dogs into knowing who's boss, because they think that respect is based on fear. Terrible. Okay, next one. Smiley says, are you actually scared of Islam and its threat to the West? Well, I'm scared of religion's threat to everywhere, not just the West, not just Islam. I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily scared of Islam. I'm fully aware, rationally aware of how dangerous Christian nationalism is, and Islam has its own variant of the same thing. Neither one of them are tolerant of the other people's existence. When either one of them gets power in government, there go everybody's rights that are subject to them. So we should do everything we can to stop both of them, because they are completely irrational. And that goes for every religion. I think every religion would end up being that way, because it's a means of manipulation of the masses. And when people get uncontrolled power like that, that's what happens. Okay, so Rachel Light says, been curious if you could do a video on the goblin shark. I think I got the name correct. Yes. Thought they were quite interesting. They are. There's a very similar species. The lineage is very, very old. So they are virtually unchanged over tens of millions of years, or hundreds of millions of years in this case. So yeah, that is kind of impressive. Not the same species, but admittedly very similar. And then Night of the Shape, $4.99. Thank you. Says, favorite hard rock and or metal band of all time. Tough call. Judas Priest, Black Sabbath, Ozzy Osbourne, and Motorhead. And if I had to choose one out of all of those, Sabbath. Trevor Wright said, can we talk about the Cambrian explosion? Love to. Wouldn't be on this show. You want to do a separate one, I'd be happy to. I mean, this experiment failed, but we can try again. 255 AD says, question. I guess the word get should be in there. I don't get why creationists don't just say something like God is testing our faith by making it seem like evolution is true. That's at least non-falsifiable. I don't understand making up excuses to believe something isn't true. I have problems with that. And I don't understand when you correct somebody and you show them what the truth is, and then you could talk to them again 2 weeks later, and they've reverted back to the old position. How many times do I have to keep explaining the same thing before you get it? Is it a learning difficulty? I know it's not inherent throughout all creationists, because there's a lot of creationists that get better, and they don't recognize themselves as being stupid before. There's a lot of them that admit that they were deceived, and so was I. I'll go further. I'll say I was a fool. But then a lot of all my spirituality happened before I was 26, and I think the human brain doesn't fully complete development until 26, and all my spirituality was before then. Spino Breaker says offers $10 Australian and says, "Hey, Aaron, been a long time. Have you heard of paleontologizing?" Nope, I haven't. He's an in real life paleontologist from California who streams at 6 p.m. every day over on Twitch talking about evolution. He's awesome. If you haven't, thanks. I would let me copy that name. Paleontologizing. Interesting. All right. I will just make a note of that and look at this as soon as this show is over, which is going to be shortly since nobody came on. So thank you very much, everyone. I really wanted to have
we did have
some mutual interactions. I was hoping for a little bit of passion. I was hoping to like break ground, but I think that's also why I didn't get any takers, because these people don't want to break ground. They are scared to be taken in a new place. The truth hurts, and they find it scary. So fantasy is much more assuring to them.
Arn, can you hear me?
Mystifying lies to me.
Arn?
Couldn't catch you, Peter. What did you say?
So we did have one thing that people were talking about.
You were cutting out really bad, Peter. You might have to type whatever you're saying in the private chat.
How about now? Is this better?
I can't hear you.
Is this better?
In wait. Oh, that's what I'm hearing. So I can't hear anything you're saying. It's that's all I'm getting. So if you need to say something to me, say it in the chat, because otherwise I'm going to close the show up if you're cool with that. All right. Thank you very much for taking part in this experiment. Let me know if I should try to do another one like this, or maybe we'll just have some people agree, yeah, I'll be there and we'll chat. But usually when I invite people to do a video hangout, turn and run. All right. Well, thank you very much. And Peter didn't say anything, so I guess we're good to go. Thank you very much and good night.